Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Edison Club. Thank you for being here with me today, as we are about to embark on our brand new journey of destruction.
Are you into high-rarity snobbery?
I am not worthy.
Or perhaps you prefer the common man's bargain hunt?
What the Yugi? Is that a Lila?
Normal summon Lumina, in phase mill, wolf, wolf, wolf. Watch your opponent devolve into tears. Stack for plague spreader, make Brionic. Brio them into oblivion.
Why me?
Special summon Judgment Dragon, nuke everything. Does this sound appealing to you? Well then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Edison Club's ultimate Lightsworn guide.
This video is sponsored by Big Boy Gaming. Follow the link in the description below for all of your card gaming needs. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Edison Club. I had a lot of people request a video on Kristya Sworn siding. I did kind of hint that I had a side deck guide in my vlog video from YCS Raleigh. So, ask and you shall receive. Today I'm going to be going over how I side with Kristya Sworn, how things have went in my experience, what's worked for me, things that didn't work for me, and just kind of talk about how I side with the deck. Before we get started, as always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really just motivates me to keep going, getting better at the game as well as content creation. Also, if you click on the description and head on down to the links below, you'll see that there are other creators that make similar content as me. So odds are if you enjoy what I make, you'll like what they make as well. So now we got that out of the way. The first thing I'm going to do here before we even start talking about side decking into matchups is I'm going to go over the deck, and I'm going to kind of give you guys some of my general advice that's helped me with side decking. So this is the list that I played at YCS Raleigh. Alright, so double Kristya, 1 Arcus, 1 Trooper, double Celestia, 1 Aaron, 3 Orange Light, 2 Honest, 1 Jane, double JD, 1 Lumina, triple Lila, 1 Plague, triple Ryko, 1 Shire, double Soul, double Hamster, 1 Charge, 1 Cold Wave, double Gold Sark, heavy, My Body, triple Recharge, double Beckoning, 1 Call, 1 Compulse. Side deck is 3 Consecrated Light, 1 Cyber Dragon, 1 Gelen Duo, 2 Thunder King Ryo, 1 My Body, 1 MST, 1 Compulse, 2 Iron Wall, 2 Decree, and 1 Transmigration Prophecy. Now, I did take inspiration from both Masha's list and Hydro Pump's list from the last RBET. You'll see their influence here on stuff like My Body as a Shield, Cold Wave. My deck is definitely most similar to Masha's list because I didn't main deck any Wolves or anything like that. In the side, you can definitely see her influence here on the Mighty Gelen Duo. A lot of people asked me, why did I side deck the Transmigration Prophecy? They would ask me, like, isn't not Graceful Charity, Soul Release just a better version of this card? And it really is better. But the thing about it is the matchups where I would board Transmigration Prophecy, they're matchups where I already side in Imperial Iron Wall. So I just never want cards in the deck that conflict with one another, or at least very many. So like having Iron Wall up and drawing Soul Release or something like Crow would be really bad. Whereas like Transmigration Prophecy can just shuffle back like their Plague Spreader, anything like that. One time I activated Charge, milled over Lumina, and then just chain this, put like their Plague back in their deck and put my Lumina back in the deck and then got it, which is kind of nice. So I think just as a general rule of thumb that Soul Release is probably better than this card. But I think in tangent with a card like Iron Wall, this just works better. Shoutouts to Times2. This was his idea. Definitely have to credit him with that. But outside of a few things, it's not a huge deviation from what I'm normally playing in Kristya Lightsworn. Like I chose to go back to Cold Wave, which oddly enough, I only activated 1 time throughout the entire tournament run. I only drew it 1 time. Stuff like the Gelen Duo. The Thunder Kings were for stuff like the Mirror Match, Dragon Turbo, Machina, Zombies, Hero Beat, stuff like that. I didn't play against any of those matchups, but the Mirror, I put them in, I didn't draw them. And then Compulse is obviously good against Vayu, and the rest of this is just fairly just generic stuff that you normally side deck anyway. So when I try to learn how to side, right, this is a lot of information, right? I'm looking at 41 cards in the main deck on the screen, and sometimes that can just be very overwhelming. So what I've tried to do, it's especially easier in a paper with paper cards as opposed to like dueling book is I'll go through and I'll put aside a whole stack of cards that I 100% would never side out under any situation ever. And it leaves you a much smaller pool of cards to actually pull from. So like for me, I'm not siding out Kristya, I'm not siding out Arcus. There are games I'll side out Trooper, but I'm not really ever siding out my Celestias. I'm not really ever siding out my Errands. Even though a lot of times people say you should side this card out, I just never like to mess with Engine. There is one exception to this, and there's 1 or 2 matchups where I take out one Lila, but that's only because there's very little back row to be played in the matchups where I take one out. So I'm never taking out my Honests, doesn't matter what matchup it is. I'm never taking out my Janes. I'm never taking out my Judgment Dragons. I'm never taking out Lila. I'm never taking out two. I'm sorry. I'm never taking out Lumina. Never taking out 2 Lilas. There are times you take out Plague. There's rarely any times I take out Ryko. So he's always staying in. I'm never really taking out Shire. And sometimes I'll take out 1 Soul of Purity and Light. And then there are definitely matchups where I take out Hamster, but I never take out Charge. There are times you probably take out Cold Wave, Gold Sark, Heavy, My Body, and never take out Solar Recharge. And never take out at least 1 Beckoning. So we've kind of went through, and like these are the cards left that we have to like work with. Depending on the matchups, we can take these out. So like the pool of cards, the pool of information that I'm looking at is significantly less now. And for me, it's like just a lot less confusing to know like I can pull from these and I don't even have to really look at any of this stuff, with a few exceptions every now. Oh, Card Trooper actually. With a few exceptions, like this stuff right here is never getting taken out. So now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, so these are the cards we're going to be pulling from, we can kind of get started on our matchups and talking about what we side for each matchup. Okay, so here we are. We're post side, right? So the first one on our list here is Blackwings. So my side deck plan, I'll put it on the screen here, for going first against Blackwings is we're taking out all 3 Herald of Orange Lights. And if you're curious as to why we're taking out these, I went back and forth a lot on whether or not this card is actually good against Blackwings, because there are times where it is very good. Sometimes hitting Blizzard at the right time can be good, or if they go for a Brio play and don't respect it and pitch multiple cards at the same time as opposed to doing them individually, sometimes this can be a big punish. But the problem with Orange Light in this matchup is when they go, especially Whirlwind Shura, you're worrying about just being able to get the Shura off the field as well as the Black Whirlwind. Like you probably won't even make it to the Blizzard recursion. So Orange Light doesn't facilitate anything in that matchup with dealing with the immediate threats that you're presented. Card Trooper going first is pretty weak because it just sits there, gets ran over by Shura and Sirocco. I do actually put this card back in going second because it attacks over Shura while getting under Bottomless, which I think can be relevant. I'm not 100% sure if that's correct or not. I want to go ahead and make a disclaimer. I am by no means an excellent Yu-Gi-Oh player, pro Yu-Gi-Oh player. Some of this could be incorrect. I always say I learn brand new things at every event that I go to, every game I play. I learn new information. There's actually a few things on this side deck list that are actually inaccurate now because of things I experienced at that tournament run that we'll cover when the time comes. But if you have your own thoughts, your own opinions, definitely put them in the comment section down below. I would love to hear them. I always say I'm just trying to improve, trying to get better. I want to eventually be one of like the big pro players, and that's my goal. So anything that I learn along the way helps me. But yeah, Card Trooper kind of just sits there and is a sitting duck in this matchup going first. We take out 1 Beckoning Light. I always kind of like to take one of these out against the decks that rush you down very quickly, like Blackwing, Dragon Turbo, Vayu. All of those decks can just put up so much damage so quickly. And just drawing this card early and drawing it in multiples especially is kind of like a death sentence. So I've been siding that out. I've also been siding out Compulse against Blackwings, and also Plague Spreader Zombie. Plague Spreader can definitely be win more in a lot of your matchups. That's why you see some lists, like Hydro Pump's list, that actually chose to just cut this card entirely, because it does really suck to draw. So in this matchup, I basically only want to be drawing just real cards. So that's kind of the nature of why I'm siding like this. And then going in, we have the triple Consecrated Light. We have double Royal Decree. We have 1 MST and 1 My Body as a Shield. All these cards are very, very good into the matchup, so we can swap those out right there. And this is what our main deck will look like post side. And yeah, Consecrated, everyone knows this card's very, very good against Blackwings. My Body as a Shield was probably my side deck card and also main deck card that overperformed the most. I really don't think that I could ever play Kristya Swarm without playing My Body as a Shield in it somewhere. Even the new Twilight list that came out a couple days ago that James Ark made does side deck one of this card. So it's just so nice to be able to drop down JD, nuke the field. If they have Road or Bottomless, you just My Body as a Shield, and the game is just immediately over. So a big fan of that one. And like MST, Decree, like we don't really have to talk too much about that. You could also consider Call of the Haunted. This was a card that I just came to the conclusion over the weekend is just not great, especially in a variant of Kristya Sworn that only plays 2 Kristya, because there are a lot of times where this card just doesn't do anything. There were times it was stuck in my hand, and I was like, well, I don't have anything to bring back that actually gets any kind of value. I didn't have anything engraved like Card Trooper, where if they heavy this or MST it, you can bring it back and get a draw one. So you also could consider siding out Call of the Haunted as well. So, all right, going second, even more important because we're going to be playing into their start. So once again, we're taking out triple Herald of Orange Light. This time we're going to take out double Gold Sarcophagus. Almost every time you have Gold Sarc in your deck, you need to be taking it out going second with a very few exceptions, just because the card is very, very slow going second. And a deck like Blackwings is just simply going to rush you down before you ever get the card. It's going to be very unlikely that you actually live long enough to get the card, or that you can even get the setup. Like if I'm trying to set up JD with Gold Sarc, it's going to be very unlikely that I'm going to be able to like stick a normal, get by Icarus, get by Bottomless, Torrential, whatever, and actually get the amount of mills I need to set that up. So Gold Sarc going second isn't that great. Same thing kind of goes with Beckoning Light. Same thing kind of goes with Compulse and Plague Spreader in this matchup. Compulse can be okay if they synchro, but a good Blackwing player should just know against you that they just keep the pressure and just keep pushing. So it really sucks to have to like Compulse back Ashura to their hand, especially when they have Whirlwind. So yeah. And then going second, it's pretty similar. We've got the triple Consecrated Light going in second. We've got the 1 MST, 1 My Body as a Shield, 1 Cyber Dragon this time, and 2 Royal Decrees. Cyber Dragon going second can just do things like attack over Shura, kind of acts like a pseudo MST in a way, can eat Bottomless, eat D Prison, stuff like that. So I'm a big fan of Cyber Dragon going second. And it's always nice to have like a one-of card in your side deck like Cyber Dragon, where if you're just playing against a random matchup, you don't really know what you're playing against, you don't really know how to side, you can never really go wrong with side decking Cyber Dragon in going second. So that clears up Blackwings. Let's go ahead and talk about our next matchup, which is Hero Beat. So, going first against Hero Beat. Cards in our deck that are just not great. We're never going to be able to Orange Light a single card in their deck that's not something like Stratos or Ocean. And even if we have to do that, it's just not great. Like, obviously, you have these in your deck for game 1. And if you have to Orange Light Stratos, it's not a terrible trade, but there are just better cards post-side that we can play. 1 Beckoning Light yet again, because we're also putting in Decrees, so we don't just want to be flooded with trap cards going first with our own Decrees. 1 Compulse, because yet again, we're just not wanting to Compulse back stuff like Alias. Compulse in the main is kind of a meta call in a way, just because of the popularity of Vayu. But it does have matchups it's not that great in. And then I also take out 1 Hamster going first in this matchup, kind of just to swap out normal summon for a normal summon. And then I had going in 2 copies of Thunder King, 2 copies of Royal Decree, 1 MST, and 1 Gillen Duo. Because sometimes Gillen Duo can really just wall them out, especially if you stick this guy on the field at a time when like they're low on Gemini Sparks or they're just trying to pressure you with AZ. Sometimes it can be very difficult for them to out Gillen Duo. You can also consider My Body as a shield for stuff like Bottomless, Gemini Spark. You can also consider it for Absolute Zero. Obviously, if you're like JD nuking the field or Celestia blowing it up. So that's another card I did consider. I don't really think there's anything wrong with putting that card in. Going second into Hero Beat, it's kind of the same thing. taking out these. We're taking out Gold Sarks again. Even though Hero Beat is a little slower, I found that if they do have multiple monsters, especially if they start off with Stratos, they're going to be able to go Stratos, get Alias, and then the next turn summon the Alias, and they're just pressuring you pretty heavy. It's not really a deck that can OTK you most of the time, if ever, but the deck does play a little aggressive, so you don't really want these in going second. 1 Beckoning Light and 1 Hamster. And then going in, we have 1 Cyber Dragon, 1 Mystical Space Typhoon, 1 My Body as a Shield, 2 copies of Decree, 1 Gillen Duo, and that's it. That's it going second. And you could also argue that a card like Thunder King is like not great going second, just because you're siding in a normal summon into like trap cards. And the thing I didn't really ever get to work out about this matchup was I was actually leaving in Compulse going second, which I don't feel like is correct. Maybe it's actually that you just swap out this Compulse for the Thunder King. But that was one thing. It was sometimes it can be hard to have perfect side outs. Like maybe you could argue leaving in the Hamster and taking out the Compulse, but needless to say, that's what I ended up doing. Don't know if it's really correct or not. I don't feel like it's correct, but like I said, this is always a work in progress as it is. So let's move on to the third matchup, which is Val-Turbo. Val-Turbo is a deck that can definitely rush you down quite quickly. So I wanted to take out stuff like Soul of Purity and Light. I actually do take out Gold Sarks in this matchup. Plague Spreader, Zombie, My Body as a Shield. Plague Spreader kind of just gets bodied by stuff like Royal Oppression. My Body as a Shield doesn't really work against a single card in their deck, except Oppression in some weird scenarios like with Lumina and Hamster. Like if you flip over Hamster and then Oppression. Going in, we've got the Compulse. This is the matchup it really shines in. Double copies of Iron Wall, MST, and Transmigration Prophecy. I don't really ever want, like, normally I leave in Gold Sarks going first, but I feel like Iron Wall is so good in that matchup early that I don't want to Iron Wall them and then, like, draw a Gold Sark for turn, and it just sit there in my hand. Especially because at that point, it's almost like, if you have Gold Sark and it's basically like you're going second, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You just don't want to have to play this card against Vayu when you're not going first. You don't want it at any point in the game except for when you're going first. And I just kind of wanted to prioritize Iron Wall in that matchup, because if you stick Iron Wall and hold like your Herald for Raikou, or you have another way to clear Raikou with like Brio or Celestia or something without flipping it, this card can really just do the most. So I want you to think about everything that this card locks out against Vayu. You lock them out of Vayu, you lock them out of Allure, you lock them out of Dark Arm technically, you lock them out of DD Crow, Necrogardna, Bottomless, and D-Prison. And there's probably more cards than just that you can just completely lock them out of. They cannot activate them. I do want to say, in regards to a card like Bottomless Trap Hole and Allure of Darkness, if your opponent activates Allure, do not chain Iron Wall to Allure, because they just have to draw 2 and reveal a dark, because the card only has to resolve as far as possible. So they will not have to banish. However, if Iron Wall is already face up on the field, they cannot activate Allure, because they can't attempt to play a card that would banish. Same thing goes with Bottomless. If I normal summon Jane, and they flip up Bottomless, and I chain Imperial Iron Wall, my Jane will just be destroyed and sent to the graveyard, as opposed to if this card's already resolved face up on the field, they cannot activate Bottomless because it can't resolve properly. So definitely important information there. Make sure that you remember that. Then going second against Vayu, we're taking out double Gold Sark, taking out 1 Hamster because it does suck to have to set Hamster into a Hamster, taking out 1 Soul of Purity, taking out 1 My Body, taking out 1 Beckoning Light. Then going second, we're putting in 2 Imperial Iron Walls, 1 MST, 1 Cyber Dragon, 1 Compulse, and 1 Transmigration Prophecy. So pretty similar to what we're doing going first. I don't really know if putting in Cyber Dragon going second is correct or not, just because it does lose to stuff like Royal Oppression. But this is a pretty good throwaway card yet again to just run into Hamsters, run into Raikous, eat back row. So maybe it is correct. I don't know. I never drew it in any of the games that I sided it in against Vayu, unfortunately. So only time will tell. All right, going into our next matchup, which is Zombies. Okay, so playing against Zombies. Here is our side deck plan for going first. We're going to take out Plague Spreader. I've learned after playing against zombies, this card is a complete liability to have in your graveyard, as cards like Zombie Master and Doomkaiser Dragon kind of just love for you to have Plague Spreader in your opponent's graveyard. So we definitely take out that guy. Take out 1 Beckoning Light. We take out 1 Hamster, 1 Gold Sark, and 1 My Body as a Shield. I don't really feel like a lot of the times having Hamster set on turn 1 is really where you want to be against zombies, just due to the nature of that deck. Gold Sark is pretty good going first only, so we never really want to draw into that card in the middle of the game, so that's why I'm taking out 1 going first. And My Body is a Shield. That deck doesn't really destroy anything outside of stuff like Dark Arm Dragon, Torrential, and Bottomless. So that's why we take that out. And yet again, Beckoning Light comes out just due to the nature of the matchup. It's pretty fast, and you just don't want to draw multiple Beckonings going first. Siding in, we have double Thunder King going in, double Royal Decree, and Transmigration Prophecy. All cards that are fairly good against the matchup. Sometimes just having Thunder King Decree against that deck can just be completely game, because this just lets you run over their Goblin Zombies, their Sanguine, stuff like that. They don't get a plus, and if, like, I always say when I stick Thunder King against that deck, I just never attack with it. I just let it sit there, because eventually this card will trade with something. They will have to use a card to get over it instead of having to use something like Deep Prison, just running this guy into Deep Prison. So going second against them, yet again, taking out Plague Spreader, taking out 2 copies of Hamster, 1 Beckoning Light, 2 Gold Sark, and My Body. This kind of just goes back to the matchup is pretty fast. We don't really want Gold Sarks going second. We already talked about My Body. Already talked about Plague. And then having to go second and like set a guy into their set guy really sucks. Because like if they go first and set Goblin Zombie, you set Hamster, they tribute it for Caius, and then things kind of just fall apart from there. So I never really like keeping in monsters I just have to set against them. Raikou is kind of the exception. You do need Raikou for the name, and sometimes this card can be good in certain scenarios, but try to not side out Raikous if I can. I try to just always side out the Hamsters. So that concludes zombies. Our next matchup will be Dragon Turbo. Okay, so Dragon Turbo is actually the same side deck plan going first and second, and that's taking out double copies of Gold Sark, taking out Heavy, taking out Plague Spreader, and taking out 1 Beckoning Light. None of these cards really do anything into that matchup. Plague Spreader, you're not really going to ever try to synchro too much. You don't really want to draw Plague Spreader. Gold Sark, the matchup is actually so fast where Gold Sark going first can actually just be too slow. Heavy Storm just kind of makes sense. Same thing goes with Beckoning Light. It's just like a death sentence if you open up multiples. Against this matchup, from what I've learned with Kristya Sworn, you just really have to hope that your engine gets going before theirs. Sometimes you can hang on by doing stuff like setting Hamsters. Sometimes it can be hard for them to deal with set monsters outside of something like Brio. You do have Orange Light, which is really good in the matchup as long as it doesn't get card destruction away. My Body as a Shield can protect your Kristyas from Lightning Vortex, protect your board from Lightning Vortex, assuming they don't have multiples, which sometimes they do because they draw their whole deck. I always keep in Cold Wave because it basically acts as like a pseudo turn skip against them. They just have to basically pass their turn most of the time. So I do think that keeping in Cold Wave can be good. Not 100% sure if that's correct or not. Definitely need more testing against Dragon Turbo. But going against them, we put in double Thunder King, Gelen Duo, and double Iron Wall. You could also consider stuff like maybe another copy of Compulse or Transmigration Prophecy. But T-King is nice. It just prevents them from getting their Whitestone searches, stops the summon of Darkness Metal. Gelen Duo can basically act like a pseudo-threatening roar if they just kind of go off into their battle phase and attack into it. And then Iron Wall prevents Darkness Metal from being summoned. So not the greatest side deck plan for Turbo. Didn't choose to side deck Oppression this time, but it also depends on whether or not they leave in Heavy Storm or not. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. If they feel like you're going to side into stuff like Oppression, then most of the time they will. So this is a matchup where unfortunately you kind of just have to pray and just hope that you get lucky, honestly, 9 times out of 10. But I feel like that's every deck when you play against Dragon Turbo. So our next deck is going to be Gladiator Beasts. Okay, so against Glad Beasts, we're going to be taking out 2 copies of Hamster because they can just run their guys into it, get free tags. Hamster is definitely not great. Ryko, however, is really good, just preventing them from being able to tag back to the deck. Plague Spreader Zombie just gets immediately hit with Ready Ari. If you mill this card over in your end phase, the odds are it will not make it back to your next turn, so why not just go ahead and take it out? One Beckoning Light, because they can just pressure you. Sometimes you can get forced to activate this card when you don't want to. There's my friend Sasha texting me his tournament update. Then Call of the Haunted, kind of the same thing. They're playing against Lightsworn, so most of the time they know the back row is not real, so they're okay with just throwing Bestiary away into it. Then Compulse isn't really good into Glad Beast either. It just sends it back to their hand. It can kind of put them back on tempo sometimes, but not really the greatest card. Going in against them, we have 2 Thunder King. This card can act like a really big wall. It takes them multiple cards to be able to get over it. They have to have like Laquari Book, or I guess technically any GB plus like Book or Shrink, but nonetheless, they have to have multiple cards to get over it. Can kind of threaten the Gazara's plays at times. They're trying to contact. It's also good if they are on copies of Gladiator Proving Ground. We have MST going in naturally because it's a trap matchup. Then we have My Body is a Shield and 2 copies of Royal Decree going in against them. All very good cards. Royal Decree can be weird at times because you do have to basically be able to go Decree with a big enough body to prevent them from just swinging over you and Bestiary popping it. But I do feel like you'd be crazy to not side that card in against that deck. So that's going first, and then going second against them, yet again, we're taking out Hamsters. We don't want them just to be able to swing into us, especially if you're going second and they summon like a Glad Beast, then all they have to do is just set Bestiary or summon Prisma, then they can just nuke it out of the way. Plague Spreader yet again, 2 copies of Gold Sark because the matchup can run you down very quickly. And then we have Call of the Haunted coming out. We have Cyber Dragon going in just because the nature of the matchup swings over all the Glad Beasts, eats back row. Can be good if they have a weak start. So we have that guy going in. We have My Body is a Shield, which is really good in the matchup. Stops Murmillo, stops Gazarez, so a lot of things there they can stop. We have MST. We have 2 copies of Decree and 2 Thunder Kings, or I'm sorry, just 1 Thunder King going in against them here. So we don't really want a lot of normal summons going second against them, but this is the side deck plan for Glad Beast going second. So next we'll jump into Hero Frogs. Okay, so yet again, Hero Frogs actually has the same side decking plan going first and second. That's taking out Heavy Storm because all their back row's chainable, taking out 2 Mega Hamster because we don't really want to be setting things. Most of the time, like sometimes you can set Ryko to deal with AZ or Vanity's Fiend. It's not the worst, and then we're also taking out My Body as a Shield. And that matchup, we're putting in 2 copies of Iron Wall, putting in Transmigration Prophecy and Compulse. Some people would argue Compulse is not really correct here, and I probably would end up agreeing with you. But Compulse does do a good job of clearing stuff like the dupe block, can clear AZ at a 1-for-1 trade and other things like that. You basically just don't want to ever have to really Compulse back Monarchs because that's not good for very obvious reasons. But sometimes you can also hit their Synchros if they try to make pushes with Junk Synchron. So that one's pretty easy. Next we'll go to cover the mirror match. Okay, so going first against Kristya Sworn, we're going to take out Heavy Storm. You could argue leaving this in if they're on stuff like Glorious Illusion, Lightsworn Barrier. There are builds out there that do play those cards. Kind of just have to use your own judgment, but as a general rule, normally you just take this card out. I take out 1 Lila because you don't really want to be drawing multiples in this matchup. Having the 2 with Charge and Beckoning is enough to deal with Oppression, should they side in Oppression against you. Taking out 1 Hamster. Taking out 1 Compulse, it's not really good against anything. You never really want to Compulse JD or Celestia or any of these guys. And then taking out 1 Cold Wave because you're not really getting to use it the way that you normally use Cold Wave. It's like if you Cold Wave them, like sure, they can't activate their spells, but more than likely you're not going to be able to just completely OTK them the next turn, and they'll just fire them all off again anyway. And then we're putting in double Thunder King, putting in My Body as a Shield, Gelen Duo, Transmigration Prophecy. All very good cards. This card does stop Charge the Light Brigade, which is a pretty big swing in tempo in the mirror. It also stops stuff like Soul of Purity, Kristya, and Judgment Dragon from being dropped, and you can protect it with Honest, which is also very nice. Gelen Duo, you can get into game states where your opponent is trying to control the field with Kristya. especially if they have millers on the field. Like when I played against a mirror match at Raleigh, the guy had Kristya, I think it was Lila and Arcus on the field, and I just set Duo into that. And he had no way to ever clear Duo, so every turn he's just milling 5 cards and eventually just mills his deck out. My body as a shield's pretty obvious. It works against Celestia, it works against Judgment Dragon, works against Raikou if they flip it up. So that's pretty nice there. And then Transmigration Prophecy messes up their fairy count, messes up their Lightsworn count, can put your stuff back in your deck as well. So that's pretty nice there. Then the only change is if you go second, you just swap out the second hamster for Cyber Dragon. And that's kind of a reoccurring theme with this side deck plan. So next we have Amarillis. Amarillis is kind of another deck where we're going to be putting in Iron Walls. So we're going to take out My Body as a shield. They don't really destroy anything. Take out Soul of Purity and Light because of we're going to be putting in Iron Walls. We take out 1 hamster, and then we're putting in the 1 Transmigration, the 2 Iron Walls, and 1 MST to help deal with stuff like Miracle Fertilizer and Mark of the Rose. This is obviously for going first. The matchup can be pretty slow, so we're going to keep in Gold Sarks here. I actually think that we keep Gold Sarks in going second as well because the matchup is actually pretty slow. So let me check my notes here. Get back to where we are. And then going second against them is basically the same, but yet again, we're just swapping out Cyber Dragon for this hamster here. You could also maybe argue Decree for stuff like Wind Blast, but once again, this is just what I used in that matchup. So we're going to go over the last matchup that I have here, which is going to be Machina. Okay, so for Machina, going first, we're going to be taking out 1 Gold Sark, take out 1 My Body as a Shield, take out 1 Super Nimble Mega Hamster, 1 Beckoning Light, 1 Compulse, 1 Call of the Haunted, and 1 Herald. And putting in, we're going to put in 2 Thunder Kings, we're going to put in 1 Duo, 1 Cyber Dragon, 1 MST, and 2 Royal Decree. So this matchup is a matchup where Orange Light can be very good against stuff like Gear Frame specifically, but it's not the best against Fortress, because if you have to Orange Light like the Fortress pop or something, you've already gone pretty neg. So you don't really want those here. The deck doesn't really destroy anything that you can use My Body on. And we're just putting in generic cards. This side deck plan is the same going first and second. Cyber Dragon is very good throughout the course of that matchup, so I do choose to actually put 1 in even when I'm going first. Another card that you could argue is actually Transmigration Prophecy. Probably should be going in this matchup. You can actually consider swapping the second Gold Sark for Transmigration, just because when they go to set up Fortress, you can just shuffle it back into the deck and get ahead that way. So that might have just been an oversight on my part, but Transmigration definitely could go in. You would have a couple traps in here with Decree, which sometimes can lead to confliction, but most of the time that's okay. This is a matchup where Arcus plus Honest is definitely really good. In the new Twilight list, it actually plays double Arcus, so that card's really, really good here. It can put in some work against them. So that's the matchup going first and second against Machina, and that's all the matchups that I had on my side deck plan because I felt like those are going to be the most represented decks I'd play against. And naturally, you can use your own context clues and your own experience to determine what you would side deck against like a matchup like X-Sabers, right? Like you might would want stuff like Thunder Kings to be able to prevent synchros. Maybe you want stuff like Compulse to be able to send their synchros back. Maybe you want MST if they're on stuff like Floodgates. Maybe you want Decrees if they're on heavy traps. Any matchups that you play against, you can kind of just go through your main and say like, okay, what is not good in here? Like look at my side, look at my cards that I never mess with. Then look at my other cards. Like, is Hamster really too slow in this matchup? Is Gold Sark too slow? Is Compulse not good? Do I need to take out Card Trooper in this matchup? You can kind of just use your own experience and your own like clues to the matchup, and usually you can figure out how you're going to be side decking into those matchups anyway. It's very difficult to build a side deck that covers 100% of matchups, which is why in Lightsworn a lot of times I'm a big fan of just side decking cards that are just fairly generic, stuff like Iron Wall, Royal Decree, Compulse, My Body. So you kind of have a pretty good matchup spread with your side deck, but sometimes against stuff like Blackwings, because the matchup can be bad, you have to side specific cards for that one, like these and this. But yeah, this is just kind of just some quick help with side decking with Kristya. Once again, don't take my word as law. I learn new things every tournament experience. Like I learned this past weekend, like I said, maybe Call of the Haunted is a card that is only played in game 1. I've actually cut this card from my list just due to it just underperforming every time I had it. It really sucks going second, plays into Royal Oppression, everything like that. Was just not a big fan. So you'll learn more things the more you play, and I'm sure that I will as well. And I try to always come up with a side deck plan for every tournament, for every list that I play. There's like definitely an intimidation factor that when you sit down and you play against Blackwings, right, and game 1's over, and you side and you're done in 15 seconds, and your opponent's still sitting there trying to decide what to side. There's like that little bit of like you're pressuring them to hurry up. So definitely knowing how to side deck and just being able to do it quickly, memorize the plan is very, very important. So I definitely recommend everyone come up with a side deck plan. Know what you're siding, know what you're siding out. Very, very important. So thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Hope this was helpful. This is Mike from the Edison Club signing out until the next one.